Hello, it is reaction time. I have a coffee, guys. This is going to be a legal eagle video. Legal eagle, right? Yeah. Authoritarianism is here. It is 2 days ago. I've already watched parts of it, or most of it, actually. So I want to disclose that before jumping into it. I will give you my thoughts on it regardless. This is a very, this is not a controversial topic or whatever. This guy knows what he's talking about, and it's called Authoritarianism is Here. It's obviously about the United States and what is happening on the other end of the world, which affects all of us. And let's listen to the man, okay? And give me your thoughts down below in the comments. Love you, say it back.
Water. America is slipping towards authoritarianism.
True.
And it may already be too late. If you've ever wondered, how could X country just let that happen? Well, congratulations. You're living in the answer. This isn't a could happen, it's happening. And contrary to popular belief,
I'm saying this for a while, by the way. Like, this is obviously a spectrum, right? Like, it doesn't happen from one day to another. It's like a slow and steady decline into authoritarianism. And at some point, it's just too late. There's no point of return. We've been through it in Germany here. We learn all about it in school and even after and before. Our system is set up to withstand exactly this decline ever again. Hopefully it works, because we have the AfD, of course, right, which a lot of people vote for. Yeah, unfortunately, it seems to still, happen. And somehow you guys have to, I don't know, maneuver your way out of this, but it's probably going to get worse before it gets better.
Authoritarianism doesn't always arrive via dramatic military coup. Democracies can, and often do, slide into authoritarianism slowly, quietly, and procedurally. There are three obvious pillars of a slide towards authoritarianism: consolidation of force and suppression of dissent, undermining the rule of law and electoral guardrails, and patronages, purges, and the destruction of independent institutions. And in just the last few months, what have we seen? Tens of thousands of career civil servants purged from the government.
Yeah.
Masked, unaccountable federal police deployed, answering only to Trump.
I'm actually under the impression that these ICE raids and all of the due process that is missing when they detain people and they just bring them into these prison camps and whatever. There are countless examples. I don't want to see anybody saying, oh yeah, they're illegal immigrants. That doesn't mean that they don't deserve due process, of course, right? And that they just get snatched off the streets and get to immediately deported or immediately detained without any due process in a country where the rule of law apparently means something to people, or it used to mean something to people. But that is either not the case any longer, or it's only the case for certain groups of people,
Immigration crackdown escalating into effectively internment camps, torture sites, and secret renditions to war zones, ensnaring citizens and non-citizens alike. Thanks, Justice Kavanaugh. Political prosecutions of rivals, dissidents, and members of the opposition party. The destruction of the rule of law through mass pardons of his team and the shutting down of investigations into his allies. For example, the January 6th insurrectionists, corrupt Republican politicians, donors, and business associates. The invasion of blue cities and states by the National Guard and Marines under the excuse of a manufactured peacetime emergency. Systematic demonization and othering of targeted groups. Immigrants and trans people blamed for every single societal problem. Ignoring court orders. Ignoring Congress by spending money that was never appropriated and refusing to spend money that was. Publicly flirting with an unconstitutional third term.
And how fast he keeps going, because there are so many examples. In the last 10 years, we have been so brainwashed and so overloaded by crime and obstruction and bullshit that you can't even go through this any longer, because every day there's something new, and we live in this fever dream now where we can't even take anything and hold somebody accountable any longer, especially if it's the president of the United States right now, because there's something new happening every single fucking day, and it's so fast that there's an overload, a constant overload of psychopathy or something, and you just can't You know, these processes take time, of course, and if you're such a corrupt motherfucker, and you have so much power, of course, as well at this point, there's just no holding you accountable any longer, you know? I don't think that's gonna happen in the near future.
As president, like a coquettish little tyrant in waiting. What a scamp. Attacking, suing, and banning media outlets that dare to criticize him, and enriching himself to the tune of billions of dollars through his crypto empire, self-dealing with his own businesses.
And it makes me so angry, everything. I'm talking myself into a rage here. No, I would love to fucking make a whole goddamn video about this, like the shilling of products he does to his like own followers and MAGA cultists, like where he just sells shoes and Bibles and crypto coins and NFTs, and there's like every 15 minutes there's a new product he shills to these people and they just gobble it up, dude. He could like shit on the streets and they would gobble it up, you know, as long as there's like a little like MAGA head on top of it or whatever. It is absolutely insane what these people, like how these people live their lives, and they're so, I don't know, sometimes, and I know that's not everybody, but sometimes it feels to me like that all they have in their life is, oh, I'm really doing bad, and I'm really like don't make it through the month with my funding. I'm with my money, with the money I have. I'm feeling terrible. I have a shitty life, and all they have is this hatred and trying to make it worse for the others so they can look down on somebody else. Oh, I have it bad, but these guys, look at them. They have it worse, you know? And then they can look down on somebody and maybe that makes them feel better or something. I'm not quite sure. That's probably part of, you know.
And selling access to the White House. This is the authoritarian trifecta, consolidating state power, undermining the rule of law, and unrestrained corruption. And we're not even a year into a 4-year term. If you saw this happening anywhere else in the world, you would call it the opening phase of a failed state. Political scientist Juan Linz identified 4 defining features of authoritarianism: limited political pluralism, constraints on legislatures, parties, and interest groups, legitimacy built on emotion, the leader as a necessary evil fighting societal decay, minimal political mobilization paired with the suppression of anti-regime activity, and vague, ever-expanding executive powers, undefined and shifting at will. And that describes America in 2025 with uncomfortable precision. Now, we recently released a video compiling all the crimes and corruption that Trump has committed so far, because frankly, there's been so much that even we, professional lawyers, we're starting to lose track.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, you know? This is exactly what I mean. And it's just such an overload that you can't even, you know, you don't even want to look any longer. That's kind of a strategy as well, I guess.
And I'm sure we still miss some. We made that video because normal people, even extremely intelligent ones, have a hard time grasping the full scope unless they are immersed in it every single day. I was at a wedding recently talking to a friend who is an incredibly intelligent, high-powered attorney. We were making conversation about what was going on in the world, and he asked why I was so worried about this country. And when I rattled off a partial list like the one you just heard, he was aghast. Because unless you're watching the news for several hours a day, it's just impossible to keep track. It's the Mr. Burns defense. Your average American might get some of these headlines, but I guarantee that the median American voter is not privy to half of this stuff. And the information economy is in shambles. Trump has spent the last 8 years preemptively accusing everyone else of corruption so that when he does the very thing that he projected onto others, it lands softly. Oh, this is just politics as usual, or, well, both sides are bad, so what?
Exactly, yes, yeah. This is also part of the playbook, yeah. That's actually super accurate, true. You know, if you always do this, and if you always tell, oh, the other people, they are so bad as well, then obviously it doesn't, you know, hit that hard if you are corrupt as well, okay? But this is not a both sides issue. There's only one man in power right now, and only one United States president, and he's blatantly and utterly corrupt, and that is the one person that has to be held accountable. Obviously, if somebody else does something that is against the law, they have to be held accountable as well, you know? You can't pick and choose. But this man is a corrupt motherfucker, and he needs to be held accountable.
But But this is not politics as usual. This is the playbook of authoritarianism. And perhaps the most galling part is how little pushback there's been, even among people who are paying attention. You might remember 2015. Remember the right-wing conspiracy theory that President Obama was going to invade red states, Jade Helm 15? Well, that fever dream has essentially come true, except it wasn't Obama, it's actively Trump, and it's going on right now. And all those Second Amendment tyranny resistors are suddenly mysteriously silent. Even worse, Trump and his surrogates now whine that simply calling their behavior authoritarianism itself is an incitement to violence, thus justifying further crackdowns. This is the logic of a wife beater. This is gaslighting on a national scale.
This
and early in
is
Trump's
so fucking true. This is the logic of a wife beater. This is gaslighting on a national scale. And so many people are gaslit for so long already. That's fucking insane. That's one of the best lines in this entire video. This is actually so true.
second term, we were asking, is this a constitutional crisis? Well, yeah, it was, but the constitutional crisis is over. We lost. Trial courts have fought valiantly, but the Supreme Court has repeatedly abdicated its role and handed over unprecedented power to the president. Not any president, certainly not a Democratic president, but to one president, Donald Trump. The Supreme Court will not save us. And for reasons that I cannot fathom, they seem to welcome the turn towards authoritarianism. Now, I recognize that it hasn't been seamless. There has been plenty of buffoonery. Trump exists in such a dense bubble of misinformation that I think he truly believes everyone else is as corrupt as he is. And that delusion has led him to empower some of the most incompetent loyalists alive, Lindsey Halligan, Alina Habba, and Emil Bove, who have bungled his revenge fantasies. And some of their ham-fisted schemes have exploded in their faces, and certain institutions, especially lower courts and juries, have pushed back. But the terrifying part is this. Their corrupt plans might have worked if they weren't so dumb, and eventually a more competent authoritarian will step in and finish what they started. As Professor Nicholas Grossman put it, in normal democracy terms, we're in bad shape and things are getting worse. In consolidated authoritarianism terms, we're doing pretty well as the regime is haphazard, meeting resistance and growing increasingly unpopular. And I think he's absolutely right, but I'm not confident that that will still be true 3 years from now. And look, I don't think we're beyond salvation yet. We do still have a choice. But 3 years from now, a whole lot of these bastards are going to need to go to jail. There will be enormous political pressure to just move on and pretend like this never happened, arguably like President Biden did after 2021.
I seriously hope that 2026, that you guys have elections, midterm elections next year, and everything goes like somewhat of normal, you know, because there is no rigging and no problem and nothing like that. And that you like that would be the ideal outcome in my opinion. You guys hand this orange motherfucker such an insane loss that he, or the Republican Party / the MAGA cult, loses House and Senate overwhelmingly, hopefully, and then they can impeach him and remove him from office. That would mean that JD Vance is going to take over, as far as I can tell. But at least he can be held accountable for his like crimes and for his like, I don't know. I think there's a right and wrong in this world, and having a United States president like Donald Trump is definitely one of the wrongs. And I don't understand why we live in this timeline where this is, I don't know, normalized by so many people. And a lot of people, I know that a lot of people don't want to talk about it and just want to shut the fuck up and keep your heads down, and at some point the world will normalize again, and you know, we can move on from then. But I think it's incredibly important to call this out for what it is, and this is just an authoritarian takeover, or at least an attempted one so far, and it is incredibly important that people talk about it, and that the information is out there, and that you use your voice. I know this channel is like super small. I just talk over these videos. Nobody watches this shit. But I think it's important that more people do this, you know? It's kind of like something I don't, you know, this is not an, I don't know, I could be wrong kind of situation. I'm like, I know that this is happening because it's happening in reality. If you're gaslit by Fox News, if you watch this for 7 hours a day, and they gobble like the orange cock the entire time, then I understand. You know, it's propaganda. That's what it is. I understand that you might see the world completely different, but if you broaden your view a little bit, you will understand what I mean. I'm sure you will.
Authoritarianism is like cancer. Ignore it and it spreads. Pretend it's gone and it comes back worse. And President Trump is a malignant tumor on this nation. Look, we no longer have a Republican Party and a Democratic Party. We have a democracy party and an authoritarian party. And unfortunately, electorally, there's not a lot we can do right now. But we still do have a choice. So keep pushing back. Keep protesting, keep recording, and keep talking. Yes, maybe it's time to bring politics back to the dinner table. A lot of people simply don't know the scope of what's happening because it's bad. But I believe there is still time. But just.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. I see it the same way. You got to talk about this stuff. It's important, and even on a small scope, like I do here. That's why I made this channel. I want to talk about these things because it affects also my life, even though I'm German. Some of you know that the United States politics on a national scale, especially, of course, affect other countries as well, all around the world. We are affected by this. And I want to talk about this, and maybe there's some person out there who watches this and, you know, it's like, man, Nico, you are based in epic. Or maybe there's somebody watching this who's like, oh man, Dino, you're such a motherfucker, fuck you and your entire existence. Who knows? I'll see you in the next video, guys. Cheers, bye bye.